Welcome to Mercedes and the Chap, a show dedicated to helping humans become extraordinary. Here we'll hone a well-rounded roadmap for us to step into our potential in all things relationships, work, purpose, and legacy. What's up, Chap?
I love it. Good seeing you again, of course.
Fancy seeing you
yes,
here.
very nice. What are we getting into today?
I have this thing on the top of my mind. It's bugging my mind. It's in my brain. And it really, I came up in a dream again the other day, but I had this experience last Halloween which I'm sure everyone who's ever put out Halloween candy has had the same experience. But basically I put Halloween candy in a bowl, whatever, and some young men, some teenage men came through, and of course we have Ring doorbell like everybody else, at this point, so you see who comes to your door now with this. And most people ring the doorbell or they take one candy or whatever. They're little kids and they're with their parents, so they're being told what to do, whatever. Well, these young guys came on Halloween, not even in costume or anything, and stole the whole bowl. This is like a typical thing. Obviously, you're going to put the whole bowl out, someone's going to steal it. You're going to be annoyed, and you're going to do what I did, and you're going to ask yourself, why did we do this? And especially, why do young men do this thing where they feel like if they don't take it all, someone else is going to? So I want to talk about that idea of it's really a idea around gamesmanship. And there's this book I'm reading that's called Gamesmanship, and it's about how to win without cheating, which I think for a lot of men, especially when I go to the other day I was at my girlfriend's, her husband's a basketball coach. And he has this team of high school basketball players who you see them all cheating or acting a little more hurt or whatever. And that's just the game. Everyone on the other team's doing the same thing. You're trying to get that little extra edge because you feel well, they're going to do it, so I should do it. And we're out of integrity when we're doing that. So I don't know, from a perspective of a man who also is raising a son who is a teenager. And what do you have to say about how do you win without cheating?
Well, first of all, the candy stealing at your house was me. And it was...
You were dressed as a teenager.
I was dressed as a teenager, but I did not have a costume on.
Yeah.
Which is hard to do. No, it's funny you should say that because I remember when I was a kid growing up many years ago, and you'd end up trick-or-treating, but not as a as a teenager, we weren't doing that. But,
right.
Maybe as a little older kid, you would inevitably run into the house where either people weren't there or whatever, and they would put either really good stuff out or just stuff out without being managed by an adult or whatever. And I always found that strange. I'm like, why are they leaving this? And I would genuinely take one, and I would be, my nice, because I knew I was somebody is either watching me, a parent, and this was long before Ring and security cameras,
right?
Really, but it was in the Stone Age, yeah. But I was just I'm not. Maybe I just why I didn't even really cross my mind. So maybe it's probably who you hang out. Part of the problem.
I was gonna say, and it's so much to do with them being in a group. So
yeah, totally.
If it was just one, I don't know, whatever we're talking about, 13, 14-year-old boy or whatever, walking up and taking the bowl by himself, that's probably unlikely. But when he's with his friends and they're daring to go get the whole bowl, those suckers left their candy outside, whatever. And now it's a competition. Now it becomes a game. And the only way you win is by being out of integrity.
Or going to jail.
Yeah,
exactly.
Literally.
So maybe not for stealing Halloween candy, but for stealing something.
Eventually.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I think that is with my kid, it has been, he's pretty good about it, I will say, but he's also been drilled into his head with this is just don't follow your your buddies. I know you think are cool and you care that they think you cool and you're cool, whatever. But it's you don't. That's not.
Well, it's also an old saying of if he jumps off a bridge, are you going to do the same thing? And it's probably young men will. They
probably will.
It's a competition. Everything's
which might be why young men tend to be good at. Hopefully, following orders in a military scenario.
There's no structure, right, in these scenarios, and that's what's lacking. Probably is what you're saying. Yeah,
and
I mean, not obviously in the military there's structure, but in this situation,
right.
With the whole
exactly. No, I love that one. I mean, I think that's kind of the beginning mindset of falling into what we're saying.
Yes.
Is let's start with the basic of you don't need to follow what other people are doing. Because remember when you're watching, I don't watch professional sports that much, but when you're watching and it's inevitable, somebody's going to fake injure.
Yeah.
And then everybody makes fun of them.
Right, of course.
Like everybody.
But sometimes they get away with it. I mean, how do we, because then it's the boy who cried wolf. Like, we don't know when you're really injured or not and what, so it just becomes this thing where we aren't considering what the origin is so that we can actually fix the root of the problem. We're just trying to get one up on the next guy, because if you don't do it, then someone else is going to take advantage, so you might as well.
Well, and this is your whole kind of proffering of integrity.
Yeah.
And we have to start with building the basics of, let's at least have some form, I mean, not have to be perfect, but some form of like internal compass. And as far as that goes, what I think is really interesting, and we were kind of mentioning this, you talking about the age of initiation,
Yes.
back in the day, or certainly in Vulcan culture, I guess you have when a Vulcan man reaches a certain age, I forgot the age, but they go through this transformation.
What is Vulcan culture?
Well, like if you're, I guess, Star Trek or something.
Star
Vulcan,
Trek. Oh,
yeah.
wow.
I mean,
We jumped.
This is really, I know. Okay, how about we don't? Anyway, but that's the kind of, like, you get to the point when you're a boy especially, right? Because the big concern in raising a son is, I'm concerned that I need to get him through into an adulthood where he's out of the house. But as part of that is, especially in today's society, and as a former, I did juvenile criminal defense for a very brief period of time. Very brief, and I would definitely not call myself an expert in that. Well, not now, but that was my job.
Yeah.
And so, but they, keeping people out of, keeping boys out of jail.
Yeah, out of that road, that path.
Yeah, because unfortunately in the world we live in, it's everything's been criminalized. So it's like, just to try to like, not, you have to know what path you're not going to go down.
That's the thing, though. How do you know? Like, basically, maybe the way to start thinking about it is, first of all, what is winning to you?
Yeah,
you know?
well, that's absolutely, that's it.
Because if winning looks like at all costs, then, where that leads you down a road that we've seen a lot of people who take that to a degree that is not healthy for the people around them, for the public that they supposedly serve, or, it can go down a very ugly route, or they end up in jail or whatever it is, trying to win at all costs. Otherwise, if you want to, to my perspective, winning to me doesn't feel good in my body if I'm not doing it with in mind the people and the relationships that I want to continue. If I'm burning a bridge in order to win, or I'm injuring someone else, or the public, or whatever, if I'm doing something that's a disservice to someone else so that I get to win, I don't feel any better about winning. Like, that doesn't feel like a win to me. So really, I think it's a matter of, like, first of all, just, it's not even a reframing of what winning is. Maybe it's a reframing of what society says winning is, but it's a defining for yourself and how it feels inside your body. What is winning actually supposed to feel like? It's supposed to feel like bliss and good. And I don't think you can have that and also be shitting on someone at the same time.
Well, no, you definitely way more deep than the way I would have said it, and that is, am I going to sleep tonight?
Yes, exactly.
And if you're worried, you worry about your, what you've done,
totally,
and you don't sleep, or you're sleeping bad or whatever. But then there's obviously people with mental. We're not talking about those people. People with mental, disorders and whatnot. I mean, that's a whole nother. We're not going into that. That's their, hopefully seeking help, whatever they're going to do.
What do you mean for someone who's like just psychopathic?
Well, yeah, because you can have a mental disorder where you just don't recognize these necessary parameters.
Yeah, empathy and that type of thing. Yeah, but we don't need to discuss,
like a chemical issue or whatever.
That's the 1% or less, hopefully less of that.
So we're not talking. We're not having anything to do with that. This is really more just like, as a normal, conscious man or human. What is your kind of, I don't want to say guide, but like, and we talked about this, you and I talked about this kind of on the phone one day, and we were talking about, and I love this, and it's got to do with when you're talking about the age of initiation, we think way long time ago.
Right.
Some cultures, still retain some of that. What I find is that, usually, I guess the age of initiation was more brought on by war back in the day, warring civilizations, warring tribes.
Or shamanism. I mean, some decided to be more in the warrior spirit, but some went out into nature and literally ate mushrooms from the ground and lost their minds and till they were able to reassemble their psyche, and that's what I call the remembering process. You're literally taking the members of your psyche and putting them back into alignment. That's a shamanist journey that is lost in a lot of
we don't
the
have
world
that
today.
And we talked about this as far as I have this sympathy, or sympathy is not the right word, but this recognition to some degree of like the old religions, or like the Greek gods, Slavic, Roman, or like Nordic. And that is, if we're going into battle, we say something to Athena, she's got our backs, or to Thor, or whoever,
And that's so much about believing in a higher power, which, this, not to go down a whole spiritual rabbit hole because we're not going to, but even like, as simple as it's not simple really, but the 12-step program, for instance, for addicts, right? Or for alcoholics, or they use that program for so many people that are trying to walk out, carry themselves out of this place where they're attempting to basically win at all costs. And the costs in addiction is obviously that you lose yourself along the way, but what you think you're gaining in every moment that you're saying yes to your addiction or your escapism is that feeling of euphoria that you little by little don't get as much of, as you get deeper down that rabbit hole. But that idea of the 12-step program where you have to assign to a higher power somewhere in, they're like, don't care what you call God. They don't care if it looks like Buddhism or it looks like Christianity or any religion or whatever. You don't even have to call it that. Like I might call it universe or something, some other thing.
Right.
It just has to be something, like you're saying with these Greek gods, where you can understand what they stand for and you can embody that a little bit. And you can go, you know what? They can guide me out of here. They can hold the structure that I need in order to not be lost in the chaos of my addiction or my desire to win at all costs, or these things that make us sick. They're literally diseases, in our body.
Well, and because really, and that's just a creative, at the very least, it's a creative embodiment of the reality. And the reality is everyone has somebody that is looking out for them or pulling for them, no matter really who you are. Somebody is. Mm-hmm. Somebody is. And even if you think you're all alone in this fight, it's just not true. No. I mean, there's definitely people out there. You might not even know them. I mean,
you might not even know them. Like even right now, we don't know half the people that are listening to this, but why? Because we want to live in this world with you. We need that mutually beneficial relationship. But there's gurus all over the planet that literally just focus strictly on putting love out there to whoever needs it. And you might not have any idea.
Yeah, you don't know. And that is, that's a fact. I mean, we all have to take that as fact that there are these spiritual people out there that give love to every human, and they are out there. So at the very least, you have to understand that. I mean, I remember in law enforcement, I would go to a call and there would be, multiple parties or whoever. And I remember a lot of the time, I would leave and mentally be pulling for those people, either be it the victim or somebody perceptively was the perpetrator of it, but maybe in reality wasn't. But you feel for them and you really are pulling for them, even if for only 5 minutes after the call, but you're certainly like leaving some mojo like of love, and I hope you do good in life.
It's a human being, and it's hard for us to just pretend that connection doesn't exist. And it really, goes down to the philosophical idea that we're all one, or that we're all this organism, that we're all trying to do this thing together. And if we try to do it alone, which a lot of winning at any cost is really what that's about, is like, well, if I take from you, that's just taking from you. I have more. It's like, oh, not really, because energetically you just shitted on yourself.
Right. You didn't, because eventually there is going to be some internal, at the very least, internal explanations you're going to have to give down the road as to how I got here.
Yeah, and that's really how karma works, is like, it's not, karma has nothing to do with what you did, it's not anything to do with what you did out there. It has everything to do with what you're doing out there feels like inside of you, because it's embedded and stored inside this one body that you get during this lifetime.
Right, that's it. We're only
comes
the
back.
One.
Yeah,
we only get the one. And you're allowed to make mistakes, just so you know.
Yeah.
And then, so the other thing, but I wanted to, when we were talking about this episode, one of the things that really keyed into me is very interesting is this concept that you brought up, and I'm going to give all credit to you. I find it very interesting, is on the false homelessness.
Yeah. Like that's such a way that is really prevalent when you see something like that happen, where I was watching like a documentary on people who fake homelessness, and just that idea of putting on a whole costume, putting on a whole show to pretend to be this thing so that you are embodying the victim mindset so that other people will feel bad enough to give you money. And it's very like the same energy, the same vibe of someone who creates this elaborate burglary scheme and creates this whole Ponzi scheme or whatever it is. And you look at them like, bro, you could have used that exact same energy, exact same intelligence, and exact same talent and just directed it towards something with integrity and probably been not just more well off, financially or whatever your original goal was, but been wealthy internally, which is really when you actually ask yourself what you want while you're on this planet, it's happiness and has nothing to do with all the shit that we pretend we think we want,
Well, and on the burglary vein, developing some elaborate Ponzi scheme or burglary scheme, assuming that you're of normal sound mind, whatever that is, but sound mind. I remember, and I think it was in law school, somebody came in, it was like a psychologist, I believe, who came in and they gave us a problem. And they basically said, this is really good for this show, by the way. And we should probably somehow deploy this at one point, but it was, if you're whatever your sexual preference is, go in and act like you're going to pick up in a step-by-step process the member of the attractive, whoever you're attracted to.
Yeah, right. Or whatever.
And so in the scenario was basically you had 8 minutes or whatever. And you started writing out step 1, go to take a shower. Step 2, drive to the bar. Step 3, wherever it was. And, we all got to I got to maybe 12 steps. Somebody got to 15, somebody got to, 8, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, there's so much more to type in. And, the person was like, stop. And they're like, okay, let's start reading some of the steps. And they're like, how many steps did you get to? And I'm like, I only got to 12. And, somebody was like, man, I only got to 8. And somebody's like, oh, I got to 30. Well, good for you, Stuart. Okay. No offense to Stuart, but it was usually actually a female. It was like, okay, whatever. But we don't like you. Law review, editor of the law review. It's like, okay, have fun at your bougie law firm in New York. Yeah, you know who you are. Okay. No, I don't know. I'm just, but anyway, I was not that person, just so you know, not even close. Sorry, Mom. But what happened is what the point, she's like, no, wait a second. Your average, they did this, I guess, I don't know, in prison. And they found that the average steps was 4.
Wow.
And it was something, I'm making this up, but it was something like, go buy girl a drink, ask her to bed, sleep with her, and somebody was nice, buy her breakfast or something. Yeah. It's if it was only that easy, the world would be really weird. But the point is the step in your brain, the way your brain functions.
That is fascinating.
And so it's maybe not, to some degree, and these are not our people that we're talking to, but to some degree, you can understand that mindset and see why maybe they tend to commit. Yeah, they tend to commit crimes. But back to the false homelessness. Okay.
Yeah.
What's so interesting is assuming you're not auditioning for a part and you're having to fall into that, or assuming you're not doing research. but what's interesting is when I would interact with homeless people, when I used to do law enforcement, I would ask them. I'd be transporting them, whatever. They'd be in the back of the squad car, and I would say something like, where do you do you have a box? Because I didn't know. I was like, do you have a box? Or where do you live? They're like, no, we just go and buy a tent. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, yeah, we go to Target and we just buy a tent, or wherever they go. I don't know. Wherever they go buy a tent. I'm like, oh, that's kind of practical. Yeah, and then when tent breaks, we got to, it's not like we don't have, and he goes, a lot of it, is very practical. It's just weird. It's like, oh, that's enlightening. But a lot of the times I would interact with these people, and it was usually somebody that was like, well, I stay at the extended stay hotel in this more, depleted area or whatever. Yeah. And I was like, oh, so you're not really, you're really jobless. Okay. Is really more what it is. But that's not to discredit the people that genuinely are homeless, but back to what you were saying, the false homelessness. I feel that anytime I'm in certain larger cities, you tend to see people and you're like, I'm not so sure they didn't take a shower this morning.
Right.
They look a little too.
Or pull up in a Benz. I mean, there's some serious criminal. There's a woman in New York who I have walked by before who wears an entire costume, apparently, with arm braces and literally hunches over. She's a young, virile woman, who long blonde swinging hair and like fit girl, whatever, and walks fine and moves fine and everything. And she literally puts a hunch on her back, walks on 2 hand canes and hunches all the way down and begs that way. But they've like they don't know her name or anything to accuse her, but they've seen her come out of her costume, basically go into a car, come out and like walk away as this completely fine person.
Well, and the question is, how does that occur? Like, why?
Well, she's also not completely fine.
Right.
Obviously, if you're doing that, you've got other work to do.
Well, and but
you're diseased, just not in the physical sense yet. Yeah,
there's something going on. Well, in that, you know, we're this is these early episodes. We're just giving you a taste of what's coming up. And as far as, you know, you have to understand, I think, as we get into this journey, and these episodes, you know, are going to vary in length, but they're going to tend to be longer than these. But it is, you have to what is winning, right? I know it's winning, at least to me. I think I know. You know it's winning to you. But you really, I think, internally have to define. Yeah, you have to question yourself. That's all the time.
Point.
Don't be obsessive about it. But when you leave, you know, work, where it's like, did I do everything I really could without being neurotic, you know, right, or whatever? Because then that's a whole, you don't want to drive yourself crazy.
I love the point you brought up about the steps that how some people jump from one step to the next without thinking about what the actual minutia is in between there that it would take for you to go on that successful date. I don't know, with a girl.
Well, that's great, because think of this. Sorry to jump on you. I'm always so like, no, you know, but the what's interesting is when you go on a trip, right? We usually remember the getting there. Life's about the journey, not the destination. Yeah, but when you really go back and think about a trip, you do remember getting there and the problems of getting there. Maybe you had a problem in customs, or you lost your bag, or you met somebody who's wonderful, or you met a new friend, or whatever. And that's it's the journey. And just like life, how crappy would it be if we just fast forward to the end,
right?
And then we're like, oh, that's all? Okay, that's it. So, and speaking of that's it, fun seeing you again. Okay, so we always talked about we're going to go down these pathways, but we want to extract it. So in 1 minute or so, what can we extract from this quick conversation?
I think it's really about doing the questioning internally before you go out into the world and try and act it out or jump from one step to the next. And I think a huge part of it is because we are goal-oriented beings, but we don't always act that way because we just forget to actually get to the small steps that it takes to get from one place to the actual goal. I think it's about slowing down enough to see, if you want to win, what are the actual steps to get there with integrity so that you don't end up getting to what you thought was winning and feel like you lost because you did it at all costs, you burned all your bridges and whatnot. And instead break down the goal reaching process into small enough steps, like you're saying, instead of the 4 steps. Maybe it's 12, maybe it's 28, I don't know.
Yeah, and try these, maybe write these down at home. Just go through and say, okay, I'm going to time myself, 5, 6, 7 minutes, and write these down and see how far you get.
Yeah, like how do you want to win in life? First of all, like write that down, that's important. And then figure out what are as many steps as you can think of, the smallest steps possible to getting there. And then start one day at a time. I mean, that's really
it. And it's really, and another way of saying it is, don't be afraid, and you should stop and smell the roses, but actually look at how wonderful the rose is and why you like it. So, where can you find us? We're about done.
Pretty much everywhere, Okay. And I think just to wrap the show, I want to say thank you guys for tuning in and watching us, and I hope we're going to be adding a ton of value to your lives through this show. You can join our community by subscribing, commenting, and connecting through the links below. And we are here every week. So we'll catch you again next week. Bye for now.